Welcome to Putting the User in UX. I'm Julie, and I'm a user experience strategist at Sparkbox. I've been a UX person for nearly 14 years, so back in the dark ages of flip phones and Blackberries. Since then, I've worked in verticals like healthcare, e-commerce, higher ed, tourism, nonprofits, consumer packaged goods, business services, and have done UX for both websites and software applications, both in-house and at agencies. Basically, I am an old lady of the web. And this talk is about how to add user research to your projects. Is user research missing from your practice? I've noticed it often is. Today we'll talk about how to add this practice at your company and, perhaps most importantly, which is also the hard part, how to find participants for your research. So let's get started. First, what is user research? Well, it's talking to the real-life users of your product or service. Start with what information you already have. So begin by reviewing information from a marketing team or product ownership team who tend to have demographics, customer surveys, customer service call logs, website analytics, site search analytics, anything like that. These folks very often have some good stuff. And then you'll probably talk to stakeholders to get a picture of who these users are and what they might be interested in. And then, once you know a thing or two about the users, you'll get out there and talk to real people. Usually this is in the form of user interviews and observations, and sometimes it's called contextual inquiry. I won't get too deep into this. There are plenty of resources out there that do a great job explaining various user research methods, but here are a few questions I always ask. Tell me about the last time you ... right? Tell me about the last time you did something that I want to learn more about. Then what happened? Tell me more about some detail they didn't give you a lot of information on, and now you're a little confused and you need more info. Yeah, basically all of my interviews come down to questions like that. And once you're done with your user research, you'll use your findings to influence the user experience design. These findings might be packaged up into personas and journeys. Here, you'll see a journey and a persona from some of my past projects. But you don't even have to be that fancy, right? A bulleted list of needs and characteristics will totally do. Because the goal of user research is not only to understand the user better, but to share that understanding with your whole team so that you all have the same North Star. As a result, you'll be able to design smarter, better solutions. You'll also have evidence-based rationale for why something ought to be. When you get pushback from someone on your team, you'll be able to point to the insights that led you to that decision. And once you start adding real user research into your process, you'll notice that people will want more of it. In an agency setting, this might mean the UX team can sell another service. And in an organization, you might be so in demand that they grow your team. Now, let's talk about why you haven't been doing user research. I've heard it's expensive, right? People say that it's not in the budget, or someone sold a project with no user research, so that project won't get any user research. It's time consuming, which is also another way of saying expensive, right? But also, there's a perception that user experience holds up real progress, which is code for getting to the visual design and development. Some people say it's difficult, and it's actually kind of easy to talk to people, but I'll agree that it is sometimes difficult to find the right people to talk to. And this one, you've been getting by without it. Sure, knowledge and best practices and your past experience and even your gut are part of what makes you a good user experience designer. But you aren't the user, and the more often you skip user research, the more likely are other people are going to perceive it as optional too. Or maybe somebody else already does it. And in that case, you're all good. You can just, leave this talk. But I don't think that this is too common. So you've been hearing all these reasons why you can't do user research, whether they're in your own head or it's being told to you by someone on your team. So how do you make user research happen at your organization? I'm about to reveal a secret that might change your life in a couple awesome ways. Just stop asking for permission and do it anyway. Start small. Be scrappy. User research doesn't have to be expensive or time-consuming. If you're doing 0 first-person user research right now, anything you do will be better than nothing. So start small. Time box yourself. Be scrappy rather than being perfect and polished. And here's what I say to the people holding the purse strings. To clients, I say, we always talk to users as part of our process, especially if you haven't lately. To managers and project managers, I tell them, I'm doing some user research. I'm allocating this many hours of the UX budget to it, and we'll have it done by this date. Is that timeline okay with you? Then I deliver accordingly. On to the next hard part, which is finding people to talk to. The first thing you should do is start by asking your client or stakeholders for people. Before you ask, have a rough idea of who you want to talk to and give them ideas on how to find people. So the easiest way I have found to find people is when your stakeholder, your client, gives you some names to contact or they make an introduction for you. So here's an invitation that I received from Auth0 to participate in research. And I'll just read this aloud to you. Hi, Julie. I hope this finds you well. My name is Blah, and I'm a product researcher at Blah. I'm reaching out because I think you'd make a great fit for a research project we're working on to find opportunities where we can improve the user experience on our website and product. I'll just be asking questions around what your journey was from first evaluating to trialing and implementing. There's no need to prepare. It's just a casual conversation over Zoom for 1 hour, and in return, I'll email you a $100 Amazon gift card of a token of appreciation, smiley face. If you're interested, book a time here. Thanks in advance, right? That was easy, and I actually did this. I participated in this research for Auth0, and then at the end of that call, she asked me if I knew anyone else who might be good to talk to. And at the time, I was in a project manager role, so I said, you know what? My tech lead on this project definitely worked with you guys a lot on this, and I think he would be great to talk to. So she reached out to him, and he got $100 too. Another thing you can do is see if your client will post something to their brand's social media accounts. Here, my client made a nice graphic for Facebook and basically requested that folks take my unmoderated usability test. Lots of people did, and you can use the same tactic for user interviews. And if they send out emails to their customers, ask them to send an email about this, or at least include it in an upcoming newsletter or something. So here's an example of Dropbox, again, asking me to take a survey, and they definitely got this from their subscriber list. And of course, if you have an email list and you have the time, consider sending a survey as part of your user research. And in that survey, include a question about participating in follow-up conversations. Here's a survey I ran with the intention of conducting interviews based on the findings. So you'll see here, I have a question that says, would you like to participate in a 10 to 25-minute phone call with a representative to further discuss your thoughts about Pittsburgh Opera? Well, sure you'd want to discuss that. And you should always ask if they have any old surveys they ran where they asked that, can we follow up with you question, and get those names, because they very well might. And then if your client uses something like Hotjar, you can have them add an intercept question to the website. If they don't use a service like that, but they do control the content on their website, ask them to add a call out asking for help. And if they seem uncertain, or it seems like they're getting the internal runaround on getting you names of folks, come up with a plan B. And that plan B is talking to users and recruiting them yourself without any help from the client or stakeholders. So I'm going to share a few strategies, and with the exception of one, I've done them all. And for that one, I'm just waiting for the right client. So when your user is a typical consumer, you actually have it pretty easy. Have you ever read those books and articles where they talk about doing guerrilla research in Starbucks? That you just approach someone and offer to buy their coffee if they talk to you about ... I have never done that. I think it seems creepy. If you think it's creepy and maybe even a little scattershot, I have some better tactics for you to try. First, ask friends and coworkers if they know anyone. For example, I was recruiting people who had recently done a DIY painting project. I reached out to coworkers and contacts and found 3 homeowners aged 26 to 45 in a mix of situations who had just painted a room. I added a few other users from another technique, and there we go. My research was done. You can also post your request to social media and ask friends to share it. Here's that Opera survey again. A bunch of us are on a volunteer marketing committee, and we were helping the Opera do some user research. We all passed this survey around on our social media accounts, and we emailed it to coworkers, we emailed it to friends and family, and we got a lot of useful responses. You can also post it to Craigslist or your local classified site. This has gotten a lot harder because of spammers and the controls Craigslist is putting on things. So ask me in the Q&A about what lengths I've gone to post things widely. And be aware that all of the research requests seem to now have to list in the community volunteer sections, which isn't really the best place, but oh well, it's one place to get users that does work. Usertesting.com is also an option, and it can be your best friend. If you're improving an existing product or you have a competitor out there, you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone by usability testing, using usertesting.com, and then asking a few open-ended questions to serve as some additional user research. It's a paid service, but it gives you a lot of valuable information. So those are all for consumers, but what about when your user is a specialized population? Specialized populations are people with certain types of jobs, lifestyles, or interests that you just can't stumble on at a Starbucks, at least not reliably. So first, ask a client if there are places online where this population hangs out. Here's what I mean. I was working on a career website for an airline. In stakeholder interviews, folks kept mentioning a website called Airline Pilot Central. It turns out this is where pilots go to gossip about salary, working conditions, leadership drama, and flow through to the major airlines. All perfect information for a career site. And then Glassdoor was where flight attendants went to swap stories about interview questions. This was like fantastic insight into what questions job candidates had, what they were concerned about, and what the client's reputation in the industry was. I've also used sites like TripAdvisor, Reddit, a professional organization's message board, and so on. Get creative, ask the client where folks are online, and if they don't know, Google widely and you'll probably find somewhere. Then, after you've lurked and gotten some good information, send a few direct messages to folks and ask them if they would be willing to chat with you. Another option is to cold call, cold email, or slide into someone's DMs. This can work if you're looking for professionals. Look at LinkedIn and Twitter and reach out. The worst thing that can happen is they don't write back. And here's the technique that I think is awesome, but I haven't found the right project for yet. Meetup.com. Let's say I'm working on some kind of product for people who practice Agile or Scrum. There are meetups for that, a ton of them. Like right here, Pittsburgh Agile, 2,000 folks, Pittsburgh Business Analysts, Western Pennsylvania Scrum User Group, etc. A ton here, right? So pick a meetup, go to it, listen to what they talk about, and strike up a conversation. At the end, they might even have an open opportunity to ask for things or make announcements, which is absolutely perfect. And here's another special population. What if you have to recruit children? Well, it turns out you have to recruit parents and get their permission. And Godspeed. Good luck with that. They're kind of a terrible interviewer, especially if they are small, like this one. So what do you do when what you're researching is a sensitive subject? Sensitive subjects can be things like addiction, mental health, certain health issues, money, sex, essentially all the things people are embarrassed about or might be shamed by others for. So I once did a research project for a hospital's bariatric specialty. This is gastric bypass surgery, gastric sleeve, etc. It's a pretty sensitive topic. These folks are already fat shamed and are told by culture that weight loss surgery is cheating. I needed to find people who were considering surgery, but before they reached out to a doctor. So I posted a blind ad to Craigslist and read a lot of weight loss message boards and Reddits. Then I reached out to a couple of people. Overall, I talked to a dozen folks, and by reading the message boards, I'd build up a lot of empathy before I ever even approached anyone. So I felt like I was able to make a better connection, and I got a lot of great insights out of that. So what to do if you actually have a budget? So you can recruit by placing social media ads such as LinkedIn or Facebook. I signed up to be part of user research from a LinkedIn sponsored post for a new UX tool a startup was developing. So it's definitely a thing you can do, and it works. There are also services like userresearch.com. They find participants for you for a fee and are pay as you go. Consumers are a lower price than professionals, but still within the ballpark of a service like usertesting.com. And of course, usertesting.com is also a paid service that we've all heard of. Lastly, if you are an old lady of the web like me, you'll remember that there are actual paid recruitment firms for market research who can assemble participant panels, focus groups, and help with the reach of your survey. These folks are still out there. And now that you've found your participants, we have to talk about informed consent. Whenever you do user research, you always have to be upfront with the people you're talking to. Tell them what you're doing, why you're doing it, and what you'll do with the information they provide. After you inform them, get their consent. I usually record interviews, so I have to ask their permission for that as well. I confirm that they've given me permission for all the things on the recording, and you can also have them sign a piece of paper or leave a paper trail of emails that proves that you got consent. And lastly, let's all thank our participants for their time with incentives. I usually use Amazon gift cards that can be delivered via email. And here's how I estimate how much incentive to give. If it's a consumer situation, I usually offer close to $1 a minute. So a half hour would merit a $25 gift card. A 15-minute chat might be a $10 or a $15 gift card. For special populations or sensitive topics, I offer more money. If they are a professional, think about how their time would normally be compensated. Remember, Auth0 knew I was a project manager and gave me $100 for an hour, right? Not bad. And if it's sensitive, you want it to be an amount of money that outweighs the embarrassment. So this is definitely going to be $50 to $100, whatever. And depending on who your user is, of course, these are just guidelines that I use. You could end up paying a lot more or a lot less. Speaking of a lot less, sometimes your users will be captive or a fan base. So when I say captive, I mean when I was an in-house UX person, I worked on a call center application for our customer service reps to use. I simply went to their manager and asked for participants. They were compensated with 30 to 60 minutes of not having to do their real job. Folks like that, you might not have to pay. If you have fans, swag and a discount, or swag or a discount, might be good enough. Or if they're super fans, they might just do it for free. If you or your company or your client holds training sessions, you can also see if you can piggyback onto those to talk to people. That generally means you don't have to give an incentive. That's what you can do for those folks. If you really don't have any budget at all for incentives, you need to be very thankful and specific about the time you'll need from them, and don't take any more time than that. And as you start to recruit people for things, you should make a database that you can use for interviews and usability testing so that you can reduce the amount of time it takes to find people. This can be really helpful and pay off in the long run. And now, the big idea. Let's all help each other. I'd like us to join forces and make one of these databases of users that we can all use. In reality, it's going to be basically a Google form and a spreadsheet, but you'll see what I'm talking about. Here's what I'm suggesting. If you offer your own name or you pass this Google form along to someone else to fill out, like your partner, your best friend, your siblings, we'll add those names to a spreadsheet and we'll collect some light demographic information about them and about their interests, and we'll share it amongst ourselves. So basically, what I'll do is you'll have access to a form. You can pass that form around, collect potential user research subjects with it, and then in return, I will grant you access to a spreadsheet of all these names. Of course, we'll have to have some guardrails so no folks get overused, and we'll ask that you're upfront about incentives, basically that you give incentives, and that you are good, responsible people with information. So if you're interested in that, in the Q&A, we'll be following up on that, and hopefully that will make user research easier for all of us. So with that, let's head into the Q&A. I'll see you there.